Hello there, I'm Big Alias, and I just shoot a flea out of my window, and then it started speaking to me in Jerry Seinfeld's voice, and then took me to court over some honey. It was some weird shit. And yes, I did just explain the premise of Bee Movie, but anyway, speaking of which, I want to talk about Anthem, which has nothing to do with bees. Yeah, it feels like I need to talk about this game. Everybody's talking about this game, and I think there's a huge reviewer audience disparity, which we're seeing a lot of these days with, especially in film now, with things like Venom and Bohemian Rhapsody. It's real switch up between reviewer and audience feedback, and I do want to be a voice in this, and I do want to open this video by talking about the fact that I really do not like this genre. I hate the MMO-like looter-shooter genre. I think that it's, and I'm going to be referring to this game as an MMO-like probably throughout this video, but I hate the fact that it takes two formulas that work well and then mushes them together, forces these two things together in a completely inhomogeneous, just totally mishmash Frankenstein monster of a game that just absolutely dilutes each formula. You know, you take the MMO, which built its strength from the fact that it's an immersive world that it lets you take part in. It plops you into this huge expansive universe where you meet people along the way who give you things to do within the world, and you feel as though you are a part of this world, and that's why people get so sucked into them and lose so much time to these games, and that's the strength of the MMO. But of course in an MMO you can't have things like good combat or, you know, structured missions, because it is a big world and you're surrounded by other people. So how about this? How about we introduce the structure of a third-person shooter, or just in general of a shooter, and we pop that in to the MMO formula? Well, no, you know, you do get to, you know, shoot people, and the combat is a lot better. You know, it flows a bit better, but of course, then you don't get to be a part of the big expansive world, because it has to then be structured. The missions have to be structured, so there has to be a place to gather people and bring people together, and then you have to get people into the game, and it has to be this co-op experience, because you have to fight over loot, and you have to make it team-based so that more people play the game and get sucked into the game. And then when you do get into it, because it has to be loot-based, and the enemies have to have a certain class impact on the game, it's all just tunnels and pathways, so it doesn't get to be as fleshed out or narrative focused. And of course you can't have a strong narrative with a game like this, because people are doing stuff all the time. You have to be co-op, and when you have to be co-op, people are talking over one another, they're jumping around all over the place, they're not queuing narrative things as they should be, or looking for the right things, so you can't really introduce a good narrative. So it just dilutes both formulas and then smushes them together and piles on a bunch of microtransactions, because this ultimately is a formula that exists purely to breed the necessity for microtransactions, an elicited feeling that you need microtransactions from the person playing the game. And I hate that. I really hate that genre. So I am going into this game with a displeasure for that genre. However, I will say I also didn't like Battle Royale games until about a month ago when I played Apex Legends, and I loved it, and I love that game, and I think it's a fantastic game. So I went into it open-minded. I also love BioWare. I mean, Mass Effect 2 is one of my favorite games of all time, easily in my top 10 favorite games of all time. And Knights of the Old Republic 2, which is the sequel, which is essentially identical to the first one, which was made by BioWare. So essentially Knights of the Old Republic 2 is basically a BioWare game. Is another one of my favorite games of all time. So they have a good track record with me. I'm actually one of the few people in the world that liked Mass Effect 3 despite the ending. I had a great time with the game. I thought it was a fantastic game. But yeah, I love BioWare, so I did go into this game wanting a lot, and it is something that I went into wanting to love, but they spend the whole time making you want to hate this game. I wanted to love it, but they want me to hate it, and it almost feels active. It almost feels as though they are going out of their way to make a game that I'm just gonna hate. They're trying to breed hate within me, which is crazy. It's like Trump. Yeah, they present you with this world that's beautiful, you know, this gorgeous jungle lush world that feels like Pandora, and it's got lots of access points for you to fly around in your mech suit, which admittedly feels great to fly in. It feels really good soaring through this beautiful world that's full of organic creatures which don't feel as though they've just been plopped in there. They really do feel like part of the world, and then you can shoot their faces off. And it, you know, it feels really good moving around this world and being a part of it. However, as you play more of the game, they make you want to hate the game. And the only way that I can really explain this in the best possible way is by telling you exactly what happens at the start of this game. So, huge spoiler alert, if you want to know what happens at the start of the game when you play it, then maybe skip past this, or whatever it is you can do. I don't know how long I'm going to be talking about this for, but whatever, man. So the way that you start the game is you're put into it, you're plopped into this kind of everything's exploding around you, and it's all just this mountainous environment, and you just basically learn the controls and shoot a few things. It's actually not bad. It reminds me of a cross between the intro to Monster Hunter World and the intro to Halo 5. It's kind of those put together, the environments of Monster Hunter World and the speed and franticness of Halo 5. And then you're given a cutscene, which actually is okay at the time. It's like, yeah, it looks cool, it's very visually nice, but it's whatever. But then as you play along the game, play further into the game, you realize that it actually has quite a good impact, and it is actually quite interesting because it sort of shows you the downfall of the freelancers. And they take this, I think it's freelancers, and they take this approach of it's not just about saving the world in this game, it's about sort of restoring the reputation of the freelancers who were once regarded as heroes, and trying to bring back people's confidence in these people that weren't able to substantially protect them, which I think is a great angle. And then the next bit, there's this ellipses in time, and then you get this like Spielberg-esque kind of like Indiana Jones or Guardians of the Galaxy, which I know isn't Spielberg, but this kind of scene where you're this guy, this fairly unknown character, and then you go and explore something and everything goes tits up and you're a part of it, and you have to shoot your way through and get back to the hub, which I think is great, and that is a great start to the game. Unfortunately, that's when it all falls apart. You're then introduced to the hub world, and I, along with looter shooters, despise hub worlds. I hate the fact that every game feels as though it has to have a pissing hub world in it now. All hub worlds do, aside for the one in Metro Exodus where they actually make the hub world part of the story, all the hub world does is hold you back, is stop you from feeling as though you're actually taking part in a journey. It stops you from feeling as though you're part of a world as you're immersed in this world, and just plops you into this random area where they just sell you shit, and it's just so monotonous, so pointless, and every game now, it seems like a prerequisite. Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Metro Exodus, all of these games, it just feels as though they have to have these hub worlds, but you don't. Listen to me, developers. I hate hub worlds, and I know a lot of other people do, but that's not the worst part about this. The hub world is the most offensively bad part of Anthem. It's the part that I hate. Maybe not the part I hate the most, but the part that feels as though it's actively trying to piss me and a lot of people off the most. When you enter into this hub world, which it has to have, it switches to first person. And the reason this pisses me off is because as a reviewer and someone who wants to like games, someone who wants to praise, particularly BioWare, but wants to praise developers and publishers for what they do, there's this inclination when you make this looter shooter genre to compare it to Destiny, because it's sort of the grandfather. I know it wasn't the first one, but it's sort of like this grandfather of looter shooters, and there's this instant inclination to compare it to that. As a developer and as a publisher, it should be your job to try to create something that's sort of derivative of the genre, but to also invent a USP. To make USP means unique selling point, to make your product different from others, and to offer your creativity into making something that isn't the same as everything else. And to switch perspectives when you enter the hub world in this is totally pointless, utterly, in every sense and shape of the word, pointless. The reason they do it in Destiny is because you can customize your character, you can do things like emotes, and it becomes a world where it's just more about interaction and showing off and being silly, rather than heading into battle and fighting things head on. You just get to have a fun time and a bit of a breakdown and a calm down. Despite the fact that I don't like the hub world, I understand what the point of it is in Destiny. Switching to first person. Firstly, the hub world is single player. It is the only single player part of the world, so there is no one to show your armor off in the hub world to, and there's no one to do emotes to. Not that you can even do emotes in the hub world. It is just a place to buy things and go and get your missions. So switching to first person is purely there to say that we do this as well, to say that we have a hub world as well, and we switch perspectives as well. Don't worry, this is just like Destiny. And this pisses me off more than any other part of the game. This actively pisses me off, despite the fact that the game collapses in on itself during this hub world. The engine reminded me of the engine in Blackout, where I said it was like when you take a 4:3 image and you stretch it to 16:9, and you could just sense that it can't cope. That's how you feel in this hub world. You just feel like the engine cannot cope. There's a tremendous amount of input lag when you're in first person, a tremendous amount of screen tear, and just this sense that it just can't hold itself together. Also, by being in first person mode, when you do interact with the characters, which admittedly I actually like. I like the banter you have with Owen, and I like the fact that every time you take on a mission from a different person, the comms that you have with that person while you're out there taking part in the combat is different. It's with a different voice actor, and I think that's great. And they each have their own idiosyncratic banter and ways of interacting with you, which I think is actually a great idea. However, they give you your missions, they give you the context for everything you're doing, they are the pinpoint of the reasoning for everything you do in this game. And it's all told through monologues, because it has to be first person, just like in Call of Duty and stuff like that. It has to be first person because you're in a hub world where you're in first person. So every bit of information you get is told through monologue. Admittedly, the facial animations are tremendous in this, which feels like a direct response to Andromeda, where they were atrocious, but that isn't enough to make up for the fact that you are just sitting there listening to other people talk and watching their faces awkwardly, because the camera doesn't move around, it's static. You're watching the cameras trying to hold your focus, which is ultimately why a lot of people have noticed that these are sort of caricatures of people, and they're very, unrealistic and not very grounded. The reason for that is because they have to hold your attention, because it's a fucking first person cutscene with monologue. That is it. That is the information you get on this game.
This place sure needs a lot of it. I think I'm all out.
Not me.
Well, everything I own is on the other side of these doors. Looks like I'm stuck here. But you should save yourself.
Okay. Good luck.
And that leads me on to overwhelmingly the biggest issue with this game, which is that you are going to spend so much time bored in this game. And I don't want to sound harsh, because I do think the combat, as a positive, the combat in this game is great. I think the way that the areas that you're in is crafted really works well to the co-op and sort of power focused shooting of this game. It's not just about shooting your bullets at enemies. You do have to balance your power as well and keep people up, and it gives you enough space, but not too much, to fly around. That's great. I think that's great. Unfortunately, you are going to spend very little, comparatively, compared to everything else you do in this game, you're going to spend a very small amount of time when playing through the story actually doing this. Yes, there is an abundance of loading screens all over the place, and that is really bad. They are everywhere. There is a loading screen after loading screen after loading screen. But here's the mission structure of the game. You log in, it loads, you then have to go find the person that you get your mission from in the hub world, where you cannot set markers to things that you want after looking at the map. You have to just remember the direction of the thing that you're heading to on the map. Okay, then you have to go find it. You go to the person you sit through an agonizingly long monologue where your character, who admittedly has a great voice, it sounds like Troy Baker but I'm not entirely sure, occasionally says yes or whatever, just tiny little bits of whatever. You have to sit through this boring expositionism which feels incredibly drawn out. Then you head to your javelin. Then you get a loading screen. Then you choose your mission. Then you get a loading screen. Then you're in the game. Then, and here's the worst part, then inevitably your teammates have shot off ahead of you and you get into the worst system in the game. I do not know, and I know I said the hub was the worst part and the fact that you don't play the game, you know, the very much is the worst part, but this is the worst individual part. How this got past testing is beyond me. In case you don't know, if you don't stay within your group, it will teleport you to your group. You have 30 seconds to catch up with your group if you are not caught up with them. But if they're flying off, no one's flying system is any faster than any others. So if they're all flying off in one direction, if you're behind, and you will have to teleport. The system will make you teleport. But when it does, you get a loading screen, which is as long as every other loading screen, which is far too long. So you'll get in, they'll shoot off, you'll try to catch up, you won't be able to. 30 seconds later, you'll get a loading screen, it will throw you back in, but inevitably, because the loading screen has taken so long, it throws you into the middle of the action. So you weren't there at the start of the action. That cuts your gameplay time down again. Now, of course, there is a chance that you could spawn in at the same time as them and keep up with them, but you will then have to nurse your character and do everything you can to try to stay within the group, and that's just, it feels completely restricting, and it adds a meta that just is inevitably annoying. I mean, it's just annoying. And then you'll be thrown into the middle of the gameplay where you'll have a couple of minutes to shoot things, and then you'll have another first-person cutscene where you're at a party or something like that, and then you have to you have 10 seconds before the game ends, and you get a bit of loot, and then there's a loading screen, and then you see your loot, and everybody has to, you know, like have this guy earn this much XP, this guy earn this much XP, then you get your loot, then there's another loading screen, then you go back to the hub world, then you have to go find the other the person that you had a mission with, then you have to go and talk to them and sit through another monologue, then you have to accept another mission, then you have to go back to your javelin, and then you get another loading screen. It's just, you spend so little time actually playing the game, and then playing the game is the best part. Admittedly, this game has fantastic gameplay. You're just not going to be spending much time playing this game. And then a few missions in, you will learn that the mission structure of this game is phenomenally bad. And unfortunately, I'm in a bit where I just refuse to play it anymore, where I'm... This kind of shit, it ended with the end of the PS2, where it's just, you, in order to get to your mission, you have to fulfill a bunch of just arbitrary, random, ambiguous, bullshit tasks in order to even get to your mission. I just don't want to do it. It's stuff like complete live events. So instead of actually playing the game, you're waiting around, or even looking around for anything that could meet these prerequisites, and if not, you're just going to be flying around bored looking for things to do. So that, unfortunately, is the core of Anthem. You know, at first I wanted to say that this would be a game that I wanted to give time to see if it would expand and become something better, and then I could potentially get into, because at first you play it and it does feel great to play, and you do have a beautiful world, but you just learn that this game just makes you want to hate it. And that's not even to mention the abundance of tutorials. I had a tutorial on how to use a map, and unfortunately when they give you these endless tutorials, you just have to skip through everything in order to even get to the pissing game, and when you're doing that, you're not able to focus on anything else. But don't get me wrong, there is good to be had in this game. It is great gameplay, and if you are someone who doesn't care about a game being deep in any way, if you just care about a surface level of a game, then you're probably going to love it. Honestly, there's a lot to love here. I think ultimately, to end this, I want to circle things back around. I don't like the looter shooter MMO light genre. It doesn't allow for deep, interesting games, and I think it's become such an ingrained part of this generation. And you know, what I want to talk about here is that every generation has what's termed a swan song. You know, the previous generation, it was The Last of Us, where they're these games that show what this generation has done for gaming and what we're capable of now. And The Last of Us in 2013, to close off the generation, showed us what we could do with narratives and character development and nuanced gameplay. And prior to that was Halo 2, which showed how far we'd innovated. There was so much innovation with that genre, with the introduction that era, with the introduction of things like Xbox Live. Unfortunately, I think Anthem is the swan swan song of this generation. I hear we're going to be getting new consoles next year, and this game is just... It's exactly what this generation was. It's taking something that is a great concept, a cool concept, that is well executed, and just layering on things that just weaken it and purposely dilute it so that it can become something that is just entirely monetarily focused, soulless, stripped down, and doesn't reach its potential whatsoever. And I'm not saying that every game in this generation is that way. I mean, this is the generation of Uncharted 4, Red Dead Redemption 2, Metro Exodus, incredible games like that. But I think the general message of this generation is this is one where the soul has been ripped out of gaming in order to just pile on things that do nothing but serve the publisher, and the publishers are doing nothing but restricting developers. And I think that, unfortunately, Anthem is the story of this generation. It's the story of the Xbox One, PS4 generation. And hopefully, I mean, I want to say I want this game to do well, but at the same time, I kind of hope it bombs. And it not doing well, it having a depreciation in sales on what they expected, being review bombed and things like that. I hope this is a message, and I hope this is the last nail in the coffin for this genre, and that we can move on and put this generation to bed. Honestly, I just want to move on to the next generation and hope that we can return to things that are more creative focused and just start again. Anthem needs to be the end now, and I think we just need to wipe the slate clean and start again. However, back to the game. As I said, don't assume that this is a game that's unplayable, despite the glitches and things like that, and there are many of them. There is fun to be had with this game, and the combat system is great, and it's gorgeous. There is customization, but inevitably everyone chooses Storm, and I'm not exaggerating, everybody chooses Storm. But it is fun, and there is fun to be had with the game. So what I would recommend is go on CD Keys. They have on EA Access, they have £2.79 EA Access just by 1 month. Then you won't forget to renew it, and you won't have to put your card into your Xbox if you don't want to. And then you get 10 hours of the game, and you get to play it that way rather than investing too much money in the game. And if you like it, you can go out and buy it, because inevitably it's going to go down in price. But that's what I thought of the game. Let me know what you think. Feel free to disagree. That would be great. I'd love to have a conversation in the comments. And I guess I will see everybody later.